Awakening the Forgotten. The Galactic Alliance had existed for nearly 3 centuries, unifying 17 sentient species across 6 spiral arms of the Milky Way. For most citizens of the Alliance, humans were barely an afterthought, a curiosity at best, a cautionary tale at worst. Once promising explorers who had expanded too quickly, only to contract just as rapidly when confronted with the harsh realities of interstellar politics. Vex Turan had never given humans much consideration throughout his distinguished diplomatic career. As a Nelvarian, tall, with iridescent skin that shifted between deep blues and purples, he had served the Alliance faithfully for decades. Currently stationed aboard the diplomatic vessel Concordance, Turan found himself filing yet another routine report about activity in Sector 87, once the frontier of human expansion. Unusual energy signatures detected near the abandoned mining facility on Proxima Delta, he dictated to his neural interface. Consistent with previous anomalies logged in former human territories, requesting further investigation from Alliance Science Division. His aide, a young Turellian named Liss, tilted her head skeptically. That's the 3rd report this cycle, Ambassador. The Alliance Council has already classified these anomalies as natural radiation bursts from the system's unstable star. Turan's skin rippled with blue skepticism. Stars don't pulse in perfect mathematical sequences, Liss, and they certainly don't go silent precisely when our sensor arrays sweep the area. He rose from his desk and moved to the viewport, staring out at the distant twinkling lights. Somewhere out there, humanity's former worlds dotted the blackness, most now repurposed by other species or simply abandoned. Did you ever meet a human, Liss? He asked suddenly. Only in educational simulations, she admitted. They retreated from galactic affairs long before I was born. I met one once, Turan said softly. A trade negotiator from Earth's colonial administration. This was perhaps 50 cycles ago, when they still maintained embassies in Alliance space. There was something in her eyes, a calculation, a patience I couldn't place, as though she was measuring something no one else could see. An interesting anecdote, Ambassador, but hardly relevant to your report, Liss noted pragmatically. Turan nodded, though unconvinced. Perhaps, still forward my observations to High Command. These energy signatures deserve further scrutiny. 3 days later, those energy signatures became impossible to ignore. The Concordance was on a routine diplomatic mission to the mining colonies of Proxima Delta when all systems suddenly went dark. Emergency lighting bathed the bridge in dim red as crew members scrambled to restore power. Status report, demanded Captain Velis, a stern Catherian whose crystalline exoskeleton glinted in the emergency lights. Unknown energy wave, Captain, reported the science officer. It's disrupted all primary systems. Backup generators responding, but slowly. Turan felt an inexplicable chill. Where did it originate? The science officer's hands flew across his console. The abandoned human outpost in Sector 87. But that's impossible. It's been derelict for decades. Before anyone could respond, the main view screen flickered back to life, revealing a sight that made Turan's breath catch. Where the desolate hulk of the human outpost should have been floating was instead a massive vessel. Its dark hull absorbed the light from Proxima Delta's sun, making it appear like a void cut into space itself. The design was unmistakably human, yet unlike any human ship on record. By the 7 moons, whispered Captain Velis. What is that? The science officer's voice trembled as he replied. Configuration matches human military architecture, but the scale is unprecedented. The energy readings they're off the charts, Captain. Turan stepped forward, eyes fixed on the massive ship. Open a communication channel. Ambassador, protocol dictates we should withdraw and notify Alliance Command. The captain protested. That ship just disabled all our systems with a single energy pulse, Turan countered. If they wanted us destroyed, we would be. They're making the statement. Let's hear what they have to say. After a moment's hesitation, Velis nodded to the communications officer. The view screen shifted, and Taran found himself looking at a human woman seated in what appeared to be a command center. She had dark skin, close-cropped silver hair, and eyes that reflected the same calculating patience he remembered from decades ago. "This is Captain Ilara Shaw of the Earth Vessel Reckoning," she announced, her voice calm but commanding. "Your ship has entered a quarantine zone. You will power down weapon systems and maintain position." Velis bristled visibly. "This is Alliance space. We recognize no quarantine zone. Identify your authority for this action." A thin smile crossed Captain Shaw's face. "My authority stems from the capabilities of my vessel, which, as you've just experienced, far exceed your own. But if you prefer formal recognition, I operate under the aegis of the Human Reclamation Initiative." "The what?" Velis snapped. Taran stepped forward. "Captain Shaw, I am Ambassador Vex Taran of the Galactic Alliance. We have no record of any Human Reclamation Initiative. Humanity retreated from galactic affairs nearly 40 cycles ago." "A narrative convenient for the Alliance," Shaw replied coolly. "In reality, we simply move our operations beyond your sensor range while we prepared." "Prepared for what?" Taran asked, though a growing unease suggested he already knew the answer. "For today, Ambassador." Shaw's expression hardened. "For the reclamation of what was ours." Before anyone could respond, the Concordance's sensor officer called out in alarm, "Captain." Multiple vessels decloaking throughout the sector. The view screen split to show tactical displays as ship after ship materialized from seemingly empty space. Their designs varied, but all bore the unmistakable aesthetic of human engineering: angular, practical, with none of the ornate flourishes preferred by Alliance architects. "I count 37 vessels," the tactical officer reported, voice strained. "All human in design, but these configurations, they're not in our database." "They wouldn't be," Shaw interjected, clearly able to hear their internal communications. "These ships represent 40 years of uninterrupted technological development, hidden from Alliance observation." Taran felt the diplomatic situation slipping away. "Captain Shaw, whatever grievances humanity may harbor, this show of force threatens decades of peace." "Peace." Shaw's laugh was sharp and without humor. "Ambassador, peace requires equality. What the Alliance enforced was not peace, but subjugation disguised as withdrawal. When humans refused to surrender our deep space mining rights, the Alliance enacted trade embargoes that crippled our economy. When we developed the first practical quantum fold drive, Alliance operatives sabotaged our research facilities. Would you like me to continue the list of peaceful actions taken against us?" Velis stepped forward, his crystalline form rigid with tension. "These are serious allegations that should be addressed through diplomatic channels, not military intimidation." "We tried diplomacy," Shaw countered. "For years, human representatives were ignored, patronized, or outright deceived in Alliance councils. So we made a strategic decision. If we couldn't succeed within your system, we would build our own." Another alarm sounded on the bridge. The tactical officer's voice rose in pitch. "Captain, Alliance response fleet incoming. 5 cruisers led by the dreadnought Immutable Justice." Taran's heart sank. The Immutable Justice was the flagship of the Alliance's 7th Fleet, commanded by Admiral Krex, a notorious hardliner with little patience for diplomacy. "Captain Shaw," Taran said urgently, "I implore you to withdraw your vessels. Admiral Krex is not known for restraint. This confrontation could escalate beyond anyone's control." Shaw's expression remained impassive. "We're quite familiar with Admiral Krex and his tactics. In fact, we're counting on them." The view screen shifted again to show the Alliance fleet dropping out of faster-than-light travel, their sleek forms arranged in standard combat formation. The Immutable Justice dwarfed its escorts, its weapon systems already powering up. A new voice cut through the communications channel. Gruff, authoritative, unmistakably Admiral Krex. Unidentified human vessels. This is Admiral Krex of the Alliance 7th Fleet. You are in violation of restricted space and displaying unauthorized military capability. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded or face immediate offensive action. Terran moved to respond, but Shaw cut him off. Admiral Krex. Right on schedule and proceeding directly to threats. Your consistency is admirable. Krex's reptilian features contorted in surprise, then anger. Who addresses me? Captain Elara Shaw, Human Reclamation Initiative. Perhaps you remember my father, Commander Thomas Shaw. His research vessel was destroyed by your patrol ships 28 years ago for unauthorized technological research. You personally signed the order. Something flickered across Krex's face. Recognition, perhaps even discomfort, before his expression hardened again. I don't recall every enforcement action from decades past. Your vessels are in violation of Treaty 87B, which limits human military presence in this sector. Comply with my order or suffer the consequences. Shaw's voice remained unnervingly calm. Admiral, Treaty 87B was signed under duress after the Alliance blockaded Earth's orbital platforms. It was never ratified by a legitimate human government, but that's ancient history now. Today is about demonstrating current reality. She made a subtle gesture to someone off-screen. We'll provide that demonstration now. What happened next occurred so quickly that Terran could barely process it. From the reckoning, a pulse of blue-white energy surged toward the Alliance fleet. It wasn't a conventional weapon. There was no explosion, no visible damage. Instead, as the energy wave passed through the Alliance vessels, they simply stopped. Engines offline, weapons powered down, communication systems silenced. Only minimal life support remained active. What did you do? Terran asked, astonished. Targeted electromagnetic pulse, specifically calibrated to Alliance technology, Shaw explained. Completely non-lethal. Their crews are unharmed, but their ships are temporarily incapacitated. Impossible, Captain Velis breathed. Alliance vessels have shielding against such attacks. They have shielding against what the Alliance thinks is possible, Shaw corrected. We've had 40 years to work beyond those limitations. She leaned forward, her gaze intense. Ambassador Terran, you seem more reasonable than most Alliance representatives I've encountered. I'll explain our position clearly. Humanity is reclaiming its place in galactic affairs, effective immediately. We've already reactivated our dormant outposts throughout this sector. By this time tomorrow, we will have restored human presence in 7 additional sectors. The Alliance will never accept this unilateral action, Velis warned. Shaw smiled thinly. The Alliance doesn't need to accept it. They merely need to recognize they cannot prevent it. The technological gap between our civilizations has widened considerably during our absence. As if to emphasize her point, a smaller human vessel detached from the Reckoning's fleet and approached the paralyzed Alliance dreadnought. It extended what appeared to be a docking tube and attached itself to the immutable Justice. What are they doing? Terran asked. Installing a diplomatic package for Admiral Krex, Shaw replied. Historical records, treaty violations, evidence of Alliance operations against human interests, along with technical specifications demonstrating our current capabilities. Just enough information to ensure the Alliance makes informed decisions going forward. The smaller vessel completed its task and returned to formation with remarkable speed. Throughout the operation, the rest of the human fleet maintained perfect position, their formation shifting with an eerie synchronization that suggested AI coordination far beyond Alliance capabilities. Ambassador Terran, Shaw continued, your vessel will be released from our suppression field momentarily. You'll be free to return to Alliance space. When you do, please convey this message to your council. Humanity is not seeking war. We are merely asserting our rightful place. The Alliance can adapt to this new reality peacefully, or they can resist and suffer the consequences. Terran stepped closer to the view screen. Captain Shaw, I appreciate your restraint thus far, But this demonstration will be perceived as an act of aggression, regardless of your intent. Let me arrange a proper diplomatic summit. There must be a way to address humanity's grievances without risking open conflict. Something flickered in Shaw's eyes. Perhaps respect, perhaps pity. Your offer is noted, Ambassador. Unfortunately, the Alliance has proven it only respects strength. Today, we're speaking the only language they understand. The view screen suddenly expanded to show a wider view of space around them. What Tehran saw made his blood run cold. Beyond the initial fleet that had revealed itself, hundreds more ships were decloaking, an armada that dwarfed anything in the Alliance registry. Some were enormous, rivaling space stations in size. Others were small and agile, moving in tight formations. All bore the unmistakable design aesthetics of human engineering, yet at a level of advancement that seemed impossible. "This is but one battle group," Shaw said quietly. "We have 6 more of equal size, positioned strategically throughout what was once human space." Tehran struggled to find words. How did you build all this without detection?" "We didn't build in Alliance space," Shaw replied simply. "When you restricted our expansion in this direction, we went the other way, into the unexplored regions beyond the Perseus Arm. We found resources, room to grow, and most importantly, privacy. We built shipyards around distant stars, mining operations on rogue planets, research stations in the spaces between galaxies, all while the Alliance believed we were licking our wounds on Earth, a broken species in decline." She stood, her posture straight and commanding. "The suppression field will lift from your vessel in 30 seconds. The Alliance fleet will require approximately 6 hours to restore full functionality. I suggest you use that time to prepare your leadership for a very different future than the one they've been planning." As promised, the Concordance's systems began coming back online. Before communications terminated, Tehran asked one final question. "Captain Shaw, why now? After all these decades of preparation, why reveal yourselves today?" Shaw's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Because today marks 40 years since the Proxima Accords, when the Alliance first began systematically dismantling human autonomy in space. We thought it fitting to mark the anniversary by undoing all the Alliance has worked to accomplish since then." The communication ended, and the human fleet began to move with that same uncanny precision, not retreating, but repositioning around the sector's strategic points. It was not an invasion force, Tehran realized. It was an occupation force, reclaiming territory they had never truly surrendered in their hearts. As the Concordance prepared to depart, Tehran remained at the viewport, watching the massive human vessels take position around the once-abandoned outpost. In the span of a single hour, everything he understood about galactic power dynamics had been upended. Humanity, long dismissed as a declining minor power, had revealed itself to be perhaps the most formidable species in known space. And they were only just beginning. The reckoning. The Galactic Alliance Council chamber had never been so chaotic. Representatives from 17 species shouted over one another, their voices echoing in the vast circular hall. On the central holoprojector, images of the human fleet loomed large. Hundreds of vessels that had appeared seemingly from nowhere, now controlling 7 sectors of what was formerly Alliance space. Ambassador Vex Tehran stood at the speaking platform, his skin shifting between deep indigo and agitated crimson as he struggled to maintain order. "Distinguished representatives," he called out, his amplified voice finally cutting through the din. "I understand your alarm, but hysteria serves no productive purpose." High Chancellor Voss, the Krell representative who led the council, leaned forward on his perch. His avian features were rigid with restraint. "Ambassador Tehran, you were present for first contact with these human vessels. Your report states they neutralized an entire Alliance battle group without firing a single conventional weapon. If not alarm, what response would you suggest?" Tehran drew a steadying breath. Caution, diplomacy, and above all, recognition of the new reality we face. The humans have clearly been developing their technology and military capability in secret for decades. The balance of power has shifted, or they've received outside help, interjected Security Director Melkar, the Solvani representative whose species had always harbored paranoia about extragalactic threats. No civilization advances this rapidly without external influence. There's no evidence of that, Tehran countered. And focusing on how they achieved this advancement distracts from the more pressing question of how we respond to it. Admiral Krex, who had been unusually quiet until now, rose from his seat. The massive reptilian scales were dull, lacking their usual luster, a sign of stress in his species. His fleet's humiliation had clearly taken a toll. "We respond with overwhelming force," he growled. "The humans have revealed their hand prematurely. They've shown impressive technology, yes, but we outnumber them 1,000 to 1. If we mobilize the full Alliance fleet, then we risk catastrophic casualties based on what we've already witnessed," Tehran interrupted. "Admiral, the data package they provided you, which I've now reviewed, includes specifications that suggest their technological advantage is even greater than their demonstration indicated." The Admiral's tail lashed in agitation. "Psychological warfare. They want us to believe they're invincible." "Perhaps," Tehran acknowledged. "But can we afford to test that theory with millions of Alliance lives?" High Chancellor Voss raised a winged hand for silence. "Ambassador, you've had the most direct contact with these humans. What do they want?" Tehran moved to the center of the platform. "Based on my conversation with Captain Shaw and the historical documentation they've provided, they seek recognition, restoration, and reparation. Recognition of humanity as a sovereign power equal to the Alliance, restoration of territories they claim were unfairly annexed, and reparations for what they characterize as decades of economic and scientific suppression." "Outrageous demands," hissed Director Melkar. "Perhaps," Tehran replied evenly. "But before dismissing them, I urge the Council to review the evidence they've provided. Much of it comes from our own archives, documents that have been buried or classified, but never destroyed." He gestured, and the holoprojector shifted to display a timeline of Alliance-human relations. "The historical record suggests that humanity's retreat from galactic affairs was not entirely voluntary. Alliance policies systematically restricted human expansion, imposed punitive trade tariffs, and appropriated their technological innovations under various security pretexts." The chamber fell silent as representatives absorbed this information. For many of the younger diplomats, this was entirely new history, events that had occurred before their time, or had been carefully omitted from official narratives. "Are you suggesting the Alliance bears responsibility for this crisis, Ambassador?" Chancellor Voss asked quietly. "I'm suggesting that ignoring historical context will lead to misguided responses," Tehran replied carefully. "The humans believe they have legitimate grievances. Whether we agree with that assessment or not, understanding their perspective is essential to effective negotiation." Admiral Krex snorted derisively. "This isn't a negotiation. It's an invasion." "Is it?" Tehran challenged. "They've occupied abandoned outposts and derelict stations, most of which were originally human-built. They've disabled our ships without destruction or casualties. They've made no attempt to push beyond what they claim as their historical territory. These are not the actions of conquerors." Before Krex could respond, the chamber's central communication array chimed with an incoming transmission on the Council's secure channel. Chancellor Voss looked alarmed. "Who would? How did they?" He nodded to the communications officer. "Accept the transmission." The holoprojector cleared, and Captain Ilara Shaw appeared before the Council, her image life-sized and crystal clear. She wore a formal uniform now, dark blue with silver accents, the emblem of Earth prominently displayed. "Distinguished representatives of the Galactic Alliance," she began without preamble, "I apologize for bypassing your communication protocols, but conventional channels seemed insufficient for the urgency of our discussion." Chancellor Voss recovered his composure quickly. "Captain Shaw, This is an unprecedented breach of Council security, yet entirely consistent with Alliance actions toward human communications for the past 40 years. She replied smoothly. We've simply reversed the dynamic. Voss's feathers ruffled slightly. What is the purpose of this interruption, Captain? To extend an invitation, Shaw replied. The Human Reclamation Council requests a formal diplomatic summit to negotiate the terms of our coexistence going forward. We propose neutral territory. Station Nexus in the Tau City system. Admiral Krex barked a laugh. You occupy our territory, disable our ships, and now demand diplomatic talks. The arrogance is breathtaking. Shaw's expression remained impassive. Admiral Krex, I understand that recent events have been difficult for you personally. Perhaps that's why you've mischaracterized our actions. We haven't occupied your territory. We've reclaimed our territory, territory that the Alliance systematically appropriated through economic coercion and legal manipulation. She gestured, and documents appeared alongside her image. Decades-old treaties, annotated with points of duress and inequity. These agreements were signed under conditions that would invalidate any contract under Alliance law itself. We've simply chosen to no longer recognize their legitimacy. This is absurd, Director Melkar sputtered. You can't unilaterally declare historical treaties void. We can and have, Shaw replied calmly, much as the Alliance unilaterally altered the terms of those treaties whenever convenient over the past 4 decades. Before the argument could escalate further, Tehran stepped forward. Captain Shaw, while the Council considers your invitation, perhaps you could clarify something that concerns many here. The level of technological advancement your fleet has demonstrated suggests capabilities far beyond what we understand. Some fear this represents an existential threat to Alliance species. Something like appreciation flickered in Shaw's eyes, recognition of Tehran's attempt to steer the conversation toward substantive issues rather than recrimination. A reasonable concern, Ambassador, she acknowledged. I can assure the Council that humanity has no expansionist ambitions beyond the reclamation of our historical territories. Our technological development has focused primarily on efficiency, sustainability, and defense, not conquest. Yet your ships rendered an entire Alliance battle group helpless in seconds, Admiral Krex pointed out. A capability we developed specifically because the Alliance has historically responded to human advancement with military force, Shaw countered. We needed to ensure we could neutralize that response without bloodshed. Chancellor Voss leaned forward. Captain, what exactly are humanity's terms for peaceful resolution? Recognition of human sovereignty within our reclaimed territories, non-interference with human technological development and economic activity, fair access to interstellar trade routes, and a seat on the Galactic Council equal to any other major species. The chamber erupted again in overlapping voices. When order was eventually restored, Admiral Krex spoke with barely contained rage. You expect us to simply hand over 7 sectors of space and grant you Council representation because you've built some impressive ships. The Alliance does not respond to threats. Shaw's expression hardened. Then perhaps it will respond to demonstration. She made a slight gesture, and the holographic display shifted dramatically. The Council chamber itself appeared in the projection, but from an external perspective, showing the entire massive structure floating in orbit around the Alliance capital world. And surrounding it, previously invisible but now revealed, were dozens of human vessels. Active camouflage technology, Shaw explained. Our ships have been in position for 3 days, completely undetected by Alliance security systems. We could have targeted any facility in Alliance space. Instead, we chose to reveal ourselves and invite dialogue. The chamber fell deathly silent. Even Admiral Krex seemed at a loss for words. Tehran broke the silence. Captain Shaw, while this demonstration certainly makes your point, it will also reinforce fears that humanity represents a threat. If your goal is truly peaceful coexistence, perhaps there are less provocative ways to communicate. Shaw nodded. A fair observation, Ambassador. The ships will withdraw to the outer system immediately. Consider it a gesture of good faith." She paused, then added, "But understand this clearly. Humanity will no longer be dismissed, marginalized, or exploited. One way or another, the galactic order is changing today." The transmission ended, leaving the Council in stunned silence. External sensors confirmed that the human vessels were indeed withdrawing as promised, moving with that same eerie synchronization that had so unnerved Tehran during their first encounter. Chancellor Voss was the first to recover. "It seems we have little choice but to attend this summit." "It's a trap," Admiral Krex insisted. "They'll gather our leadership in one location and strike." "If they wanted to strike, Admiral, they just demonstrated they could have done so at any time," Tehran pointed out. The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was inevitable. 3 days later, the Alliance delegation, including Tehran, Chancellor Voss, Admiral Krex, and representatives from each major species, arrived at Station Nexus aboard the diplomatic vessel Concord. Station Nexus had once been a thriving hub of interspecies commerce and cultural exchange. Built jointly by humans and Alliance engineers nearly a century ago, it had fallen into disuse after humanity's withdrawal from galactic affairs. Now it hummed with renewed activity, restored to its former glory in a matter of days by human engineering teams. The human delegation awaited them in the central conference chamber, a vast circular room with a transparent dome offering a spectacular view of the surrounding space. Captain Shaw was present, but no longer the central figure. Instead, she stood behind an older human male whose bearing suggested natural authority. "Welcome to Station Nexus," the man said as the Alliance delegation entered. "I am Director Marcus Chen of the Human Reclamation Council. Thank you for accepting our invitation." Chancellor Voss inclined his head slightly. "The Alliance seeks peaceful resolution to this situation, though we protest the manner in which these talks have been arranged." Chen smiled thinly. "Noted. Please be seated." As the delegations took their places around the massive conference table, Tehran studied the human representatives carefully. Besides Chen and Shaw, there were 5 others. A diverse group in terms of age, gender, and ethnicity. What united them was a certain intensity, a focused purpose that seemed to radiate from each of them. "Before we begin formal negotiations," Chen said, "I believe context is important. With your permission, I'd like to share a brief history of human alliance relations from our perspective." Without waiting for agreement, he activated the chamber's holographic system. Images filled the air above the table. Earth's first contact with alliance species, early cooperation, joint ventures in science and exploration. But as the timeline progressed, the narrative darkened. 20 years after joining the galactic community, Chen narrated, humanity developed the first prototype quantum fold drive, a technology that would have revolutionized interstellar travel. 3 days after our successful test, our research facility was destroyed in what was officially recorded as an accident. The hologram showed the burning wreckage of a massive complex. Alliance investigators claimed material failure. Our own investigation, suppressed from official records, found evidence of targeted sabotage. Admiral Krex shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Chen continued, detailing incident after incident. Human colonies finding their resource claims suddenly invalidated by Alliance regulatory changes. Trade routes redirected away from human worlds. Technology sharing becoming increasingly one-sided. The final straw came with the Proxima Accords. Chen said, his voice hardening. "When humanity refused to accept restrictions on our development of artificial intelligence, technology essential to our survival as a smaller species, the Alliance imposed sanctions that crippled our economy. The hologram showed Earth's orbital stations dark and abandoned, supply ships turned away, colonies withering. Officially, humanity accepted the Alliance's terms and retreated into isolation. Unofficially, we made a different choice. Our best minds, our most critical resources, our most ambitious projects, All were secretly relocated beyond Alliance sensors into what you call the Perseus Void. There, free from interference, we built a new civilization, one founded on the premise that humanity would never again be at the mercy of alien politics. The hologram shifted to show massive construction projects in deep space, shipyards larger than cities, research stations dedicated to technologies far beyond current Alliance capabilities, self-sustaining habitats housing millions. For 40 years, we've developed, expanded, and prepared. Not for conquest, never that, but for the day when we could return as equals, not supplicants. The hologram faded, leaving the chamber in tense silence. Admiral Krex was the first to respond. An impressive narrative, Director Chen, but it conveniently omits humanity's violations of Alliance protocols, dangerous experiments, unauthorized weaponization of civilian technology, attempted military expansion into protected sectors. Violations defined by standards created specifically to constrain human development, Shaw countered. Standards that mysteriously didn't apply to Krell or Solvani initiatives of similar nature. Before the exchange could escalate, Tehran raised a hand. If I may, reconstructing historical grievances, while important for understanding, doesn't address our immediate situation. Director Chen, what specifically does humanity seek from these negotiations? Chen nodded appreciatively at the redirection. As Captain Shaw outlined, sovereignty, non-interference, fair trade, and representation. In practical terms, we want formal recognition of human authority over the 7 sectors we've reclaimed, guarantees against Alliance interference in human technological development, access to Alliance trade networks on equal terms with other species, and full voting membership on the Galactic Council. Chancellor Voss spread his wings slightly, a gesture of consideration in his species. These demands would constitute the largest territorial reformation in Alliance history. The Council would need assurances that human expansion will end with these 7 sectors. We're not interested in territorial expansion, Chen assured him. These sectors represent our historical claims, nothing more, nothing less. And what guarantees do we have that your advanced technology won't be used against Alliance interests in the future? Director Melkar asked sharply. The same guarantees you provide that Alliance technology won't be used against us, Chen replied evenly. Mutual respect, transparent communication, and the understanding that conflict serves neither of our interests. Admiral Krex leaned forward, his scales darkening. Fine words, but your actions tell a different story. You've positioned cloaked warships throughout Alliance space, demonstrated weapons that can neutralize our defenses, and effectively held a gun to the head of the Council itself. These are not acts of a peaceful civilization. For the first time, Chen's calm facade cracked slightly. They are the acts of a civilization that tried peace before and was systematically dismantled for it. We attempted diplomacy 40 years ago, Admiral. The Alliance responded with embargoes, sanctions, and covert operations. This time, we approached from a position of strength, not to threaten, but to ensure we would be taken seriously. A distinction without a difference, Krex growled. Tensions escalated as both sides dug into their positions. After hours of increasingly hostile exchanges, Tehran requested a brief recess. As the diplomats dispersed for refreshment, he approached Captain Shaw, who stood alone by the viewport. "This isn't going well," he observed quietly. Shaw glanced at him, her expression guarded but not hostile. "Did you expect it to? 40 years of mistrust doesn't dissolve in a single meeting." "No, but escalating confrontation serves neither of our peoples. Admiral Krex is looking for any excuse to justify military action, regardless of the consequences. And your Director Chen seems equally determined to prove humanity's superiority at every turn." Shaw was silent for a moment, studying the stars beyond the viewport. "You're different from most Alliance diplomats I've encountered, Ambassador Tehran.